this video, I want to talk to you about my favorite herbs to mix with your coffee. So this is obviously going to be more so a fun video. It'll definitely be informative, but obviously not as in-depth and lengthy as most of our videos are. As you've probably seen, last month we did a series of recipe videos, just so that way you could get familiar with how I personally use the different tonic herbs on a pretty regular or daily basis, and to give you a little bit of inspiration in terms of, using those herbs on a daily basis. Something that I said a long time ago in one of the first videos is that, the number one rule to tonic herbalism is compliancy. If you're not compliant with the herbs, if in other words you don't take them, they're just not going to work. So really, one of the biggest obstacles is to make sure that you're taking those herbs daily. Now, obviously, if you've tried any of the herbs here, you know that the powdered extracts, they taste really great. They have a wonderful taste quality. In fact, for a tonic herb to be considered a tonic, it has to taste good. So they generally mix really well with things. It's not like people don't consume the herbs because they don't taste good, at least not tonic herbs in my experience. But nevertheless, unless you're mixing them into a food that you consume on a pretty regular basis, it's kind of hard to get the herbs in. I personally sometimes just take a tablespoon of herbs and just take it down with water, but most people aren't going to do that. So I found that this video should be super helpful because we're going to talk about coffee. And Americans and people all over the world consume gallons upon gallons and gallons of coffee every year. So this is something that should be a very great delivery mechanism in terms of flavor, and something that's practical, something that people use daily. But also, coffee enhances the benefits of most herbs. So in Chinese medicine, coffee is considered an herb and is treated as an herb rather than just a food. In fact, actually, all foods in Chinese medicine are treated sort of like medicine. It's known in Chinese medicine that foods have a very profound effect on the body, and therefore they're treated with that respect. So coffee is considered more so an herb. It's considered to have adaptogenic-like qualities, so it can be energizing, but it can also be sort of relaxing too, depending on how you metabolize caffeine, of course. But the great thing about coffee is it helps drive the constituents into the blood system, into the circulatory system, to enhance the medicinal constituents of herbs. So we find that infusing coffee with herbs creates a very delicious and synergistic beverage. So the coffee enhances the herbs, but the herbs modulate and sort of moderate the effects of the coffee. So now, with that being said, if you're interested in learning more about the effects and the benefits of coffee from a Chinese medicine perspective, we have an article dedicated to that specific topic. So if you're interested in that, definitely head to our website and check out that article. However, without further ado, I want to talk to you about my personal favorite tonic herbs to add to coffee in terms of their synergistic effects on coffee, but also their taste, because not every tonic herb tastes good in coffee. Some taste better than others, so that was definitely a factor in selecting these herbs. However, this is a list too that most other people would agree with. So the first herb I always recommend people trying their coffee is reishi. And that's for the simple fact that reishi is one of the best tonic herbs on the planet. It's one of the most medicinal mushrooms on earth. It has incredible health benefits. I won't go into detail about that just to spare you. I'll put a link to the benefits of reishi here at the end of this video so you can check that out. But in short, reishi, number one, sort of has a coffee-like taste depending on how you use it. If you're using our powdered extract as a very bitter coffee-like taste that blends perfectly with coffee, you almost hardly even notice it's there. So you're just getting those medicinal benefits added into your coffee. And specifically, in short, reishi is fantastic for clearing the liver of toxicity, of emotional trauma and physical toxicity as well. It contains high levels of superoxide dismutase, and it helps the liver generally clear heat away. And coffee, keep in mind, is a heating food. So if you have too much of it, it can overheat the system. So reishi helps balance coffee in that way. Reishi is also an adaptogen, so it helps protect your HPA axis from becoming overstimulated or fatigued from the caffeine in the coffee. So this is a really great adaptogen herb that pairs very nicely with coffee. And something that's really fun to do is actually to take fresh reishi if you can find it in the wild, or if you buy some dried reishi, and brew a tea out of that. but then use that reishi tea to brew your coffee. And that creates a very excellent tasting coffee that's infused with medicinal properties. Another fantastic herb to add to your coffee is lion's mane. And this is because lion's mane is one of the unique brain tonic herbs that helps your brain improve its ability to cognize. So the ability to logic, reason, think, recall, remember, focus, pay attention. And that's because lion's mane has a specific property to it in that it can help your brain produce more nerve growth factor, which basically means that it's going to help your brain reproduce on a neurological level. It's helping your brain work more efficiently. That's the basic way to put that. So in other words, lion's mane is a tonic to the brain, improves cognition, it gets your brain working, it's a circulatory to the brain, and most of the reason that people consume coffee other than its delicious taste is that it does very similar things. It improves your focus, it improves your concentration, it uplifts your mood. So lion's mane and coffee have sort of shared similar properties. So I find that by adding lion's mane to it, you get a very well-rounded cognitive uplift or enhancement sort of tonic. And again, it tastes very well. Lion's mane has a good taste when you get it in an extracted form. I wouldn't recommend blending fresh lion's mane into your coffee, but again, using a powdered extract of the herb, or you could brew a tea and do something similar to what I recommend with the reishi. You could essentially do that with all the herbs I'm going to recommend here in this video. So another really great Chinese herb to add to your coffee is cinnamon. I recommend using Ceylon cinnamon, which is of the highest quality. Other cinnamons can tend to have mold on them and they're not as therapeutic in terms of their medicinal content. And Ceylon cinnamon has the most profound effect on regulating the blood sugar. So in some people, too much caffeine can throw off their blood sugar, and so that can lead to a crash. So that crash after the caffeine is typically a blood sugar crash. So adding Ceylon cinnamon to your coffee not only improves the flavor incredibly, but it helps regulate your blood sugar despite the caffeine of the coffee. So I recommend using a small amount of Ceylon cinnamon because it is powdered whole herb, it's not an extract. So if you use too much, it could clump in the coffee, and that doesn't really result in a very good consistency of the coffee. So use a small amount, a quarter teaspoon or so, just for those medicinal properties and for the flavor of it. Another great herb to add to your coffee is pine pollen. Now, this is for a few reasons. One, pine pollen has an incredible consistency. If you get the cracked cell wall pine pollen that we have, it's so powdery and fluffy, you hardly even notice it. You could pretty much stir it into your coffee with a spoon and it dissolves perfectly. But in China, pine pollen is used as sort of a nutritive enhancement. It contains over 300 different nutrients in it. So it's often that in China they add pine pollen to their flowers, they add it to their soups, they add it to most of all of their cuisine to basically ensure that whatever they're consuming is incredibly nutrient dense. But pine pollen, like reishi, has a cornucopia of benefits, so definitely watch the video I made on pine pollen to learn more about that specifically. And in fact, do that with every herb I'm talking about here. We have videos on all of them separately, and you can really learn about the therapeutic properties you're going to reap by consuming that on a regular basis in your daily coffee. And in short though, pine pollen is going to be a natural sterol, so it's a natural plant steroid. So it's really great for bringing up testosterone, improving your energy. It's a tonic to the whole body actually. Pine pollen is one of the few herbs that tonifies all of the organ systems. It's a tonic to every organ in the body. So that's really fantastic. It's a really great way, like I said, to basically enhance your nutrient uptake on a daily basis. So another really great herb to add to your coffee would be a cooling herb like dongui. Dongui is a blood builder. While coffee helps move the blood and move the qi in the liver, dongui is going to help your liver produce new and healthy blood. And keep in mind that coffee is a heating herb, so too much coffee can overheat the liver and can cause heat in the blood or toxic heat in the blood. So you want to make sure that you're not producing too much heat in the blood. And a really great way to ensure that and sort of round off and balance the heating properties of your coffee is to add some dongui and ensure you're building up healthy blood that is not overly heated, in other words. So last but not least, one of my favorite herbs or mushrooms is chaga. Now chaga makes for a really smart herb to add to your coffee because chaga just so happens to contain the highest level of alkalinity in any substance on earth. And considering the fact that coffee is acidic, it's obviously less acidic if it's free of mold, if it's high quality coffee, if it's processed properly. However, nevertheless, coffee is still slightly more acidic and heating, but adding chaga to your coffee is going to ensure that the pH is a little bit more neutral, because you have something that's pretty acidic and then something that's highly alkaline. Not to mention, chaga is highly medicinal. It's an antiviral, it's an immunomodulatory, it's an adaptogen herb. So again, it's going to help protect your nervous system from the stress. It's going to help fight pathogens and enhance your immune system. And chaga just so happens to taste fantastic. In Siberia, chaga is actually used as the primary sort of coffee. So where coffee is not necessarily native to their land, they use chaga mushroom as a coffee sort of substitute. That's a very similar taste to coffee as well. So again, similar to reishi, it tastes very good when you add it to your coffee. So these are my favorite herbs to add to your coffee for taste and medicinal purposes. For a few final tips, the goal in consuming coffee is basically to consume as much as you can for pleasure, without basically consuming too much to where you run into negative health consequences, to where you're either addicted to it or you're dependent to it on a physiological level. And I find personally that by enhancing your coffee with these herbs, and by also choosing really high quality coffee, again, free of mold, organic coffee, shade grown coffee, and coffee that's processed properly so it's not overly acidic, if you do these few things and you consume, again, within moderation, you'll be able to find that you can consume coffee on a regular basis without any ill consequences or any ill effects. So if you found this video helpful and you liked it, definitely give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel for future videos. And if you're interested in trying any of these herbs in your coffee, then you can check those out by clicking the link below.